Hello, everybody, and welcome to Courage Rises with Susan Jeffries. I'm excited today to introduce you to my friend, Kerrie Davis. Kerrie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you live, what you do, how old you are, that kind of thing.
Great. Yeah, well, my name's Kerrie Davis. I'm now an Arizona resident, transplanted from Oregon. I'm 65 years old, recently married about 2 years. I have two kids, a son and a daughter, and two grandkids. But the man that I married has a daughter, and she just had a brand new little baby boy. So we added to our family. So pretty excited about that. I'm a nutrition consultant with a company that just figured out how to get more plant nutrients into people's lives, and I love what I do.
That's awesome. Thank you, and
Yeah.
congratulations on your
Mhm.
grandchild. That's so exciting. I am
Mhm.
patiently waiting to see if we will be blessed with grandchildren at some point.
Ah,
Not always patiently.
so
Okay,
exciting. It's so much fun.
that's good. And I notice we have a little bit of a
Yeah.
delay, so we're going to work with that, a delay between our computers. So that's good. So thank you for volunteering to be on what I call my show. um, when I started up a few months ago, you said, "Oh, I've got an interesting story to tell." So, Kerrie, why don't you just go ahead and tell us?
That's perfect. Well, I think that as individuals, we kind of harness defining moments. And I think we have lots of moments in our lives. It's kind of like a fork in the road. And depending on which one we take and how we react to it, helps us to become the people that we want to be. It's kind of like the potter and the clay. I think that we get molded by these defining moments, and I think that they help shape us into the life that God intended us to live. And courage, I think, gets intermingled with faith. And I don't know if there's just one defining moment in a person's life. I think we all have um, moments of courage that helps to get us to the place of where we live that abundant life. And I really want to kind of go through just a series of things that happened in my life that caused me to rise, but it also led me to a place where I learned more about courage than I ever thought.
Oh,
And
very good.
I think it started with my first marriage, which was not a good marriage. It was an abusive marriage, and it was filled with a lot of drugs and alcohol. That was when I was very young. And it ended with me on the run for a couple of weeks with a 6-month-old. And I think at that point, I felt courageous to leave, because sometimes women don't feel that. And I felt like I had the courage to leave because I wanted a better life for my son. And
Yeah.
then I led into like 5 years of being single. And I have a heart for single moms because they take their mom, dad, they're everything, you
Yeah, it's
know?
very true.
I just have a complete passion to help single women. And then I ended up getting married to a man that I just loved, adored. He was my best friend. He was my baseball coach, just the epitome of a good man. And we had a daughter, and I just thought life couldn't get much better. And then 6 years into the marriage, he had this massive stroke, and
Oh,
he
Kerrie.
was paralyzed, and he was sick for about 2 years. And there are moments in that 2 years that I felt myself rising because I knew I had to. I had two kids at home. My kids were 6 and 12 when this happened. And then 2 years later, he passed away. And here I was, a single mom again with kids 8 and 14. So I just thought, there was so much of that shaped me in terms of what I could go through and what I had to rise up against. But life keeps going on. There's just these moments of losing family members to suicide, and all of these things kind of help form people so they get to this place. And I got to that place in 2004, And I decided that because of the experiences that I'd had in my life and how strong it had made me, and then there's a difference between, I think, strong women and women of strength. I think women of strength comes from the inside, and I think your courage causes that to rise.
Mm-hmm.
That strength inside, that resilience, that grit to get through things that are tough and hard and miserable. I just think that that really helps to shape us. Well, I decided to open my door to homeless young women and foster care kids, young women transitioning out of foster care. In particular, they were the teenagers. They were the kids that nobody wanted.
That's
They
right.
were the tough kids that were coming out of institutions. And I think the most courageous thing I've ever witnessed, honestly, is to open your door and here's this kid standing in front of you with their lives shattered, with a little bag of their belongings, walking in, not knowing if you're going to hate them, love them, if you're going to be mean, if you're going to be kind. They don't know anything.
Right.
And they walk into your home, and it's the most incredible source of courage I have ever seen in my life. And over a period of about 12 years, I had about 247 kids come through my house.
Oh, Kerrie, that is a lot
And
of
in that,
people.
it's a lot of kids. And I was working. I was working at the time. So I was working. I had 4 dysfunctional teenagers. Like it was nuts in my house. Like the police knew my house very well. And, but I've had kids where, you got them in the middle of the night after they got blown through a 2nd-story window because their mom was cooking meth. And here they are, and you're at the hospital with them. But there was one particular young lady, I kind of wanted to focus on today because she is, without a doubt, has a piece of my heart. And this girl is more courageous than she ever knows. Like she's just beginning to scratch the surface of like, who am I and am I courageous?
Mm-hmm.
And this girl is without a doubt the most courageous girl I've ever seen. I got her when she was 11. At 12, her mom was involved in she was a drug addict, was involved in a very horrific accident that sent her to prison. So I had to go to school and tell this young lady that her mom was going to go away. And you could see on her face, like,
oh, yeah,
the reality of I'm never coming out of foster care. Like just that look of absolute hopelessness, right? And she settled in. We kind of figured out some things, and she settled into a routine. And then she was an incredible artist, and she actually had an art show, sold some art, and brought her home. We're having dinner, let the girls go. I had a fenced yard, and in 15 minutes, this girl disappeared.
Oh, gosh.
And I searched and searched. And as a mama's heart, like, when you can't find your kid, right?
Well, and it's scary.
And I just became like this mom.
You don't know what's out there waiting for them.
Yeah, right. You have no idea. And I searched and searched and searched for probably 3 or 4 hours. And then all of a sudden she comes running into the house, and I kind of knew what happened. Somebody had grabbed her.
Oh.
And unfortunately was raped. And for that whole period of time, she was gone. Under my watch, which as knowing it wasn't my fault, but on the other hand, as a parent, you feel so responsible to these children, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it ended up where we ended up convicting him.
Oh,
and we
good.
had to go to court. And that was just like one thing, like for her. I know he got 7 years. He's going to get deported. But this young lady went through a couple of those incidences. So it wasn't once, it was twice.
Oh my God.
She had been abused since the time she was 2 years old. I mean, her history is just incredible. And she ended up with an eating disorder. And so then I was like transporting her to all these eating disorder clinics around the state and out of state.
Some way
and
for
it
her
ended
to
up where the state said, you can't keep her safe.
Yeah, some way to for her to have a little control.
Right, right. It was her only way, right? And so the state has finally said, you know, you can't keep her safe. I was in guardianship with this girl. You cannot keep her safe. And this is kind of like the short version of all this, but so the guardianship was dissolved, but we still were connected. And so it got to a place where she was getting ready to age out. You know, at 18, they just turn kids loose.
Yeah.
There's no transitional living anything for kids. And so at 17, they realized we got a problem, and this kid is going to be a victim if we don't do something, because she was still struggling. She was down to about 80 pounds.
Oh my
So
gosh.
they connected her with a family member in Mexico that she never knew. She never had met them, never knew. And they asked me, because she's kind of like my kid. I've been with her 6 years. She's kind of my kid.
Mm-hmm.
They asked me if I could take her down to the border to reunite them. So I had my hesitations on all this because she wasn't real strong. Yeah, she wasn't strong. And she was, just the thought of family lit her up.
Sure.
Like she had some family member that she didn't have, right? So when I moved down here to Arizona, she came with me and I took her over the border. And it was the most incredible reunification, I thought, that I had ever seen. Both of them were crying. I thought, this is the perfect solution for her. She's Hispanic. This is the perfect solution for her. And I crossed the border and I thought, oh, this is really good. Within a month, she got a hold of me and she said, I got to get out of here.
Oh no.
And I was like, what's going on? And so now the person she trusted is now being inappropriate in multiple ways. And all of a sudden, after about a month of trying to figure out how to get her back over the border, communication stops.
Oh no.
And this person stopped it. So now I'm going like 6 months. I can't reach her. I can't go get her because I don't legally have a right to her. She's stuck in this situation. I'm seeing pictures being posted and I can't even respond to her. I'm blocked. And when she manages, right at the age of 18, about 3 weeks before she turned 18, she contacted me and she said, I got this phone and they don't know I have it. What can you do to get me out of here?
Mm-hmm.
So I went to work. This is where courage rises, where everything that happens in your life, when you know you're fighting for your life or you're fighting for somebody else's life, and
Yes.
it doesn't make any difference who's in your way,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I feel like courage and faith collided.
Right.
And
right.
I said, I'll do whatever I can. So I went to work. And this was such a miracle of God. I can't even begin to tell you. So I got a hold of somebody who spoke Spanish, who gave me a referral to somebody, a pastor, who she felt like would be able to help me. So I contacted the pastor up in Oregon, wasn't in here in Arizona, up in Oregon. And he said, you know, I have somebody else that I want to get connected in this whole situation. And he said, it's a teacher. I said, great. Teaches Spanish at one of the high schools. I said, super. So the three of us got together. Come to find out, the teacher had a sister. This is so in the same area. Now, this girl is in the interior of Mexico. It's not like a border town. It's in the very interior, like probably 14 hours, 12 to 14 hours inside Mexico.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's very remote. His sister is 6 miles away. So
Amazing.
we pull funds together, and our first step was figure out how to get a ticket to her to catch the bus, right? To get her, and we have to do it the day after she turns 18. We can't do it a day before.
Mm-hmm.
So we get the money sent to his sister, who's a pastor, and the day before her 18th birthday, we asked this one young woman to go to the marketplace at a certain place and meet this pastor. So they meet, and the pastor gives her the ticket and tells her to hide it. And I tell this young woman, like, you have to get your passport. You have to get your any kind of ID you brought with you. And when I tell you to go, there cannot be anything in your backpack. You need to go to the market like you do every single day, but you cannot take anything. You have to hide everything that you're actually leaving. So the day comes and she turns 18. The following day, she's catching that bus. And there's such a tight, we had to coordinate it to where I could be over the border during the daylight and
Waiting
not
for
at
her.
night,
Yeah.
for obvious reasons, waiting for her. And that made the turnaround in Guadalajara so tight that we were really within 10 minutes of catching the bus to get her to Nogales.
Wow.
So the day comes and she texts me and I said, you have more strength than you know inside of you. This is the most courageous thing I've ever witnessed. Here you are. And she's frail. She's like 80 pounds again. She's got her eating disorders blown up because of all the stress.
Mm-hmm.
She's very thin. She speaks no Spanish.
Oh, so
So
tough.
everything
Wow.
she has to do, I'm translating for her. So I'm translating stuff to her to tell other people, like in the cab, in the bus, all that. So I said, when you wake up tomorrow morning, it's going to be a brand new life for you. She said, I'm scared to death. I said, that's okay to be scared. Just embrace it. And then know that your new life is on the other side of that border. That's all I want you to focus on is the border,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and coming home. So the next morning she gets up. She says goodbye to everybody. She's going to market. She has her backpack on with nothing in it, like, so she could put vegetables and whatever in her backpack. So she's leaving behind everything, her clothes, her pictures,
Oh, God.
everything she ever owned is
Everything,
back in that room.
everything that, yeah, tied her to her past life. Yeah.
Right. And she walked out that door and she caught that bus. And I was driving on my way down to Nogales when all this is unfolding. And she gets to Guadalajara with 5 minutes to spare to catch this other bus. And we've got a lot of prayer warriors on this, but 5 minutes to spare. She gets on the other bus, gets going, and about halfway down to about Tucson, I just got a sense like I need to pull over and pray for this young lady. So I pulled over and prayed really hard for her, and then texted her, and she said, Kerrie, they've pulled me off the bus. She said, I
Oh.
don't have the right paperwork.
Oh, no.
And her family member never got the right paperwork. So she was in the country without really was supposed to be there. So I said, all I want you to do is cry as hard as you've ever cried. I said, you have your passport, right? She said, yes. I said, I want you to start crying now that your mom is waiting for you and that you need to get to the border and it wasn't your fault. And that's exactly what she did. And these guys felt so bad for her. They let her back on the bus without
Oh,
the
my
right
goodness.
paperwork.
That's a great story.
And so now she's, so now she's on the bus and it takes another 6-7 hours to get to Nogales.
Mm.
And I have to tell you, when I saw her, because I had to get her from the bus station to a taxi cab to get her to the border, it was the most incredible. There was a rainstorm and there was like 2 rainbows. Like, it was the most incredible witness of courage I have ever, like, I thought I was courageous in
Right.
so many times in my life, but to see this little 18-year-old face, because she had to ride that bus at night with no one around her, not understanding what people are saying to her.
Oh, that would be so hard.
No food. Oh my gosh, I just couldn't believe it. And it was so interesting because we got her over the border, and my community that I belong to with just these incredible nutrition wellness warriors, they all went together and because she left everything, they donated like, I don't know, it was like $1,500 to go and buy her ticket home, to get her clothes, to get her school supplies. I mean, they just stepped forward, and it was that outpouring of love, I think, for her was like, these people don't even know me. and they're loving on me this way. It was just such an incredible blessing for her. And she, you know, she's still in Oregon. She's struggling, but she came out about maybe a month ago and did a post. And she said, I'm finally at a place where I want people to hear my voice.
Oh, good
And I'm
for
going to tell the
her.
truth about what happened to me. Yeah. I mean, that's the first step to recovery. Is
Yes.
what happened to you. You are the victim. You are not the person guilty of anything.
Yep.
You know, and if you think about, you know, this poor young lady had, I don't know, 7 cases of child abuse against her, starting at 2. So this young lady has never really known what it's like to have a voice,
Or a
you
loving
know, and to
relationship.
be able to figure out none. And so just to watch her grow and blossom has been just an amazing journey with her. But I just, you know, it's those kinds of things that these young women go through, raising their kids on their own. I mean, there's just so many stories of these kids' resiliency and grit in the face of things that I don't think I could even describe. You know, even knowing what I've been through, you know, we talk about our life-defining moments, but then you look at somebody like that and you think, wow, it's just
Well, I can tell
kind
you
of pales in comparison.
all of mine would pale in comparison to that story too. I
Yeah.
applaud you. There are so many things in this story. I love what you said about courage and faith colliding. And I like to talk about the transformational aspect of courage as once you do something courageous,
Mm,
that it allows you to integrate that into who you are, you know. And some of these things, you know, there's a common theme through a lot of these interviews in that you feel like it's the only thing you can do. Really don't have a lot of choice. You've got to do this or perish, right? And
mm,
I just think when someone tells them, like you told her, that was a really courageous thing to do, you know, that enables her to build herself up on that platform of I'm courageous, I can do it. And you just don't know what
mm-hmm.
impact you had by telling her that on allowing her to find her voice and be able to talk out loud
Mm-hmm.
about some of these crimes that were committed.
Right. And, you know, I think that when we're talking about courage and finding our voice and that whole, you know, I think all of us have courageous moments. I think
Yes.
we have more than one. I think we all have these moments that define us. Like, I did that. But, you know, what it does for us is it builds this like foundation of not being the victim. And it really is like when something happens, we have a choice. And I used to tell the kids, you know, you can back up and make any decision differently unless you hurt yourself or somebody else. That was a really big thing after losing a lot of people in my life to drug abuse and suicide. A lot of those kids emotionally were just shot.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have the ability, even if the decision didn't work out great, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. Back up and start again.
Yes.
There is nothing that can cause you to fall down and stay down. If you fall down, stand back up in the midst of it. And that requires all of us to be vulnerable
Yes.
with our flaws,
Mm-hmm.
with the things that have happened that maybe we haven't done all that well, but it doesn't define us.
No, I
It
completely
does not
agree.
define us.
You
We
know,
stand back up.
and,
Yeah, we stand back
make
up
a change.
courageously.
Yes, and make a change. Exactly. I love that idea
Right.
of you're not stuck
Yeah.
with a decision that you've made in the past. I like the idea that you can take a look at it and re-examine it and do it again.
Yeah, and learn.
Yes.
We either learn or we don't grow. I mean, we grow because we make decisions, and that's why our children, that's how God defined it. I mean, we're supposed to let go of our kids to learn. You know, because we could tell them to avoid X, Y, and Z, but that's our experience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They have to make some of these decisions and learn about them in order to grow from them.
Yeah, I
You know,
agree.
and I've never kind of figured it out with these kids, even adults. something will happen, and there's a percentage of people that will have the victim mindset, and then there are people who have the growth mindset of like, what did I learn out of this? And
Mhm.
I've never been able to figure out what it is inside each of us that triggers that, because probably out of that 247 kids, I'd say 30 of them have gone on and they're just living these incredible lives, and they're flourishing. They have beautiful families and careers. They've gone to school. But the vast majority of them have gotten stuck into the messaging of, this is the only life you're ever going to have. And
Yeah.
that takes courage to get out of that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think a lot of that comes from when we are just really tiny, and things feel kind of hopeless, and you're like, okay, this is what life is. It's hopeless. And
Right. It's all that messaging.
it takes grit, takes courage, bravery to kind of move forward and dare to think that there's something else for you. And I find, I've had a
Right.
very cushy life compared to the kids you're talking about, and I still find it hard sometimes to, take a different approach and to think growth instead of stagnation.
Right. Well, and with growth, it is challenging and it is scary, and change is scary.
Yep.
But when we grow, our life grows.
Mm,
You
yeah.
know, God intended us to live this incredible, abundant life. He did not want us to live a life that was miserable and, you know, that wasn't fruitful. He all wanted us, but we are a people of free choice, and things do happen to us. But then that's where I think it kicks in inside somewhere, that courage trigger of saying, this is not going to define me, and this is not going to be where I land,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know?
That's an incredibly powerful story. I also want to talk a little bit about you and your courage to take these kids in. I mean, how did you know you'd be able to handle it? I think about those kids that are aging out. I probably think about them maybe once a week. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, could I? And um, tell me how you decided and why you knew that you could do it. Was it a
Mm.
thing where you were called to do it, or?
You know, I think part of it is a calling. I think part of it, when my son was 21, he attempted suicide, and the doctors called me and said he has a story to tell you. And I found out that my son had been abused, molested from
Oh,
the time he was 6 years old till about 12 by a family member that I had no clue.
oh no.
And for the life of me as a mom, because the family member lived with us, and back then we always talked about stranger danger. We didn't talk about,
Family danger.
like a family member. It was beyond anything I could ever think of. Right. And so I had to be real vulnerable and really honest, and really spend some time and thought about that. Like, how did this happen? How could I stopped it? Whatever. It went on for a couple of years, and I was teaching some kids that were disenfranchised. They were homeless, and a young woman shared her story that she delivered her baby in the bushes, and the baby was a result of a rape that occurred in a foster home. She had fled the foster home, and she had given birth to this baby, and she touched my heart in such a way. She said, all I wanted was someone to care about me.
Mm-hmm.
And it just struck my very soul. And I thought, okay, I prayed about it. I was like, okay, God, my kids are out of my house. I have 2 empty bedrooms. Is this what you want me to do? Can I make a difference with my experiences in life with these kids? Can I do anything? And he came back and said, yes, you need to love on these children for the least of these, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I went back to that program, and I started taking in a couple kids at a time. They were homeless between 16 and 23, some pregnant, some with kids. And then I found out that the foster care system was just overburdened and no place for these older kids to go. And so they
Right.
were kind of languishing in institutions.
And no guidance. Yeah.
So I opened my door, no guidance. And that was another thing of courage for me was I ended up starting my plan B, which is what I do today. And I was making the most money I've ever made at this credit union. I was in the financial services industry as a manager. And God just kept opening doors. And so I gave them my resignation and just started doing this and taking care of these kids.
Wow.
People were like, why are you leaving? You're in your 50s. You have no real retirement. Like, what are you thinking about? And I was like, I have to follow what God's put on my heart. I can't say no.
Yeah.
There's too many door openings.
Too many fingers.
And sure enough, I left and
Yeah.
right. And my house was filled within 2 days with kids. Man, I tell you, I've learned some of my biggest lessons from them.
I'm sure.
I talked about things I never thought I would talk about or listen to or
Yeah.
witness. But having said all that, the bottom line is all they wanted was someone to step in the gap.
Sure.
You know, they just wanted someone to care. Yeah. It was a blessing. I did it for 12 years. They thought I wouldn't last that long.
Well, congratulations.
But,
And I know that those kids that went through your house have maybe some of them not as dramatically as the woman you were telling us about, but I know you've influenced them for the better and you've made their lives just a little bit easier. And, God bless you for that.
thank you. You know, one of my visions is to be able to build a transitional living home for just those kinds of kids, like an apartment complex where they can have help, an on-site manager, good food. That's a whole nother thing is good food. How we feed our brains is how we behave. Oh, there's some huge lessons. And just help them, like checkbooks and interviews and all of that. They need help. Yeah. So that's my vision.
That is awesome. Well, Kerrie, I really appreciate you sharing that story with us and your story as well. It's such an interesting one. You have gone above and beyond what most people will do for others by opening your home so many times. And I commend you for it. And I thank you for it.
Thanks. It was a blessing.
Yeah, I love the way you look at it. Okay, that's gonna wrap up our time together, our interview together, Kerrie. It's such a pleasure to have you on my show, and I know we're gonna be talking again soon in the future. Thank you.
This is Susan Jeffries of Courage Rises. Thanks for joining me for episode 10 with Kerrie Davis. If you have thoughts or experiences to share around the subjects of courage or bravery, or have a practice of your own on these topics, please email me at susan@couragerises.life. I'd love to hear from you. Please stay tuned for episode 11, which will be airing soon. Thank you.